Yeah, you can go ahead and pull our
Sure. Thanks, Jim. If I could, we want to start the meeting today. Rather than doing a formal roll call, we're going to kind of ask folks to go around. But before we get the roll call started, kind of want to just provide, we got a lot of members in the audience today, a couple new commission members this quarter. So I'm going to start with just a little bit of context, a little bit of background. First of all, my name is Matt Mearsman. I serve as the director of the St. Joseph River Basin Commission. But technically, I'm an employee of the Michiana Area Council of Governments. And joining me today from MACOG is the acronym, is Ashley Matthews here. Ashley helps me with all sorts of different things related to the River Basin Commission. So thank you all for coming. Like I said, I think it's important to kind of give us some context. The commission itself is technically an agency of the state of Indiana. We were created back in the 80s to address water quality concerns in all the lakes and streams that drain to the St. Joe River. Later, our scope was expanded to also be concerned with flood mitigation. And when we talk about these issues, we can talk about the water, certainly. And, you know, many of the members here are responsible for managing public infrastructure that is directly contacting the waterways. I think of it like plumbing, like the pipes, the storm sewers, the drains, the ditches, that kind of stuff is sort of the obvious things we think about when we think about water management. What's less obvious is all this land that's draining to the river. So, you know, we've got 15 counties that drain into the St. Joe, and it's the actions that take place on that land that has the biggest influence on water quality as well as flooding and flood mitigation. So I will say that our mission and our statute empowers us to work across the border in Michigan. You see by the map that I'm showing now that over half of the basin comes from Michigan, is in Michigan. And although we do projects in Michigan and we try to engage with Michigan, the funding and the governance of this entity comes entirely from the Indiana side of the line because we were created by the Indiana General Assembly. So just that for background. I am not going to spend any time on this slide. It's got a lot of stuff that comes out of our statute about what we can do, what we try to do. The important part is related to what we're doing today, which is to provide a forum for the discussion, the study, the evaluation of shared water resources across this big basin. So as far as who the commission is, you're going to hear them all introduce themselves, but it's a very specific membership from each of the 6 counties in Indiana for folks who have an impact on water, who touch or manage water. And so, you know, we got health department, soil and water, drainage through the county surveyor, the executives, the mayors, the county commissioners. And then, of course, we got the DNR. Technically, we are part of the DNR. I don't know if our DNR rep is here today, but Matt Horsley often represents the director of the DNR here at these meetings. So it's a very diverse group, and I think that's appropriate for the scale or the scope of the mission that we're trying to fill. So with that, I'll stop on background and just say a couple things. We don't have any of our members participating virtually today, so we don't have to worry about roll call votes for things that are not unanimous. But we do sort of have a convention that I always explain, or a practice. I don't know what you want to call it. I always struggle with what to call it. Custom. We have a custom to try to show broad consensus for things that when a motion is made, if you state, we want you to state your name, of course, for the minutes it's helpful. But if you could also state the county that you're from or that you represent, because what we'd always like to try to do is get a different county to second that motion to kind of formalize that broad consensus. So I think that's all I got on background. And like I said, rather than a formal roll call, I'm going to kind of ask us to go around the table and say these things. That is, your name, your title and affiliation, yourself. And then, I don't know whether you noticed it on that previous slide, but the statutory members do have the ability to designate someone else to serve on their behalf. So if you're here as a proxy representative of another office holder or another individual, please state their name and title. That would be helpful. So I'll go this way.
Jewel Wise, proxy for the Texas Water Conservation District.
John Robert, John Robert. Jim Ware, County Surveyor. Your power grant amount, brother. Front key, county soil water. Corey Stewart, deputy surveyor, French County. What hour director of building and planning, representative.
Probably Red Assistant Plant Director, currently representing Surveyor Gibson.
Who works the real director, building surveyor. Who works the Mount Secretary, supervisor, Delaware County Health Department, and proxy for health officer for the side. Union City Road Park, Mayor Ron oversees.
Dan Lash, McGraw County, on the proxy for County Commissioner Anita Hess.
As I was to go to the proxy for
What? It's probably in the box. I'm sorry. We did that to Jewel too.
Walsh, Minister of District Department, proxy for Dr. Tigers. Help us. Chris Thomas, the Dangle, sport coordinator. Janelle Meyer, district coordinator, of Student County Soil Water Conservation District.
Awesome. Thank you, Chairman. We have more than enough for a quorum. We have 20 folks here today.
All right, we're going to move on to consent.
Yeah, I'll just add on introductions. There's a couple of you, you'll be getting an email from me that I mentioned at the last meeting, this House Enrolled Act 1509. It's kind of an administrative thing, sort of some things that we have to post with our agenda around membership and who appointed you and what your term is and that kind of stuff. And I've got a handful of you whose proxies have expired. You've been serving on this board for a long time. We didn't used to treat it as an expiring thing. So I got to follow up with a couple of you to get new proxies signed by the folks. Yep. Yeah, I think so. You might be in good standing and still, but anyway, I'll follow up via email with you and the office holder. So just a note on that, Jim. Let's see. I guess the first item in the consent agenda is our minutes from the September meeting. Circulated those meeting materials. We had some packets here. Thanks to Ashley for her work on those. I think it is getting a little easier with AI. Is starting to help with some of that stuff. So that's nice. Any questions for me on the minutes? Jim, you know this. Everybody, the consent agenda will approve everything as one lump thing. If anybody has something they want to pull, yeah.
Make that known and anybody has any questions on that, then you can find out.
Sure. This was also included in the packet. There are three items in the financial report, three different things. The first one is basically like a profit and loss statement. We started a new fiscal year since our meeting, but we're always reporting one quarter in the rear. So our new fiscal year started on July 1st, and your report covers through September 30th. Not a whole lot of activity in that first quarter. Just a couple, what I have notes here. There was one thing that I wanted to, we're on target on the local government appropriations, I guess, is the one thing which I could say in the next statement or whatever, but we don't send those out until after the first of the year. So we won't have any local government income until probably second or third quarter even. And then we've got all of our special projects kind of have had delayed expenses to them. So you'll see there hasn't really been much that's gone out under special projects yet, but those will definitely, they have already started. We're well way into the second quarter now, and we've got those things coming in. I don't know if there's anything else. Anybody have any questions on the profit and loss statement? I'll just move to the next two. Yeah. So the next one is basically like our balance sheet, how much we've got in our fund, in our account, and what kind of payables we have. The payables that are shown on there were for MACOG services from the first quarter. Actually, those might be from the quarter before, the last quarter of fiscal year 25. The number to pay attention to is that total fund balance number, just over $500,000. That's essentially how much money we have in the bank as of September 30th, given our accounts payable, our liabilities. So we're in good, strong financial position. And then the last statement, the other two are accrual basis. This is cash flow, so it's definitely going to look a little different than that first statement. This is just the actual checks going out and coming in. So we have expenses on this report that are from the last fiscal year. So the numbers will be a little different. You see that, we're about 5,000 under for the year. Again, a lot of that's due to not having local government appropriations come in. And then we had several rather large expenses at the end of the last fiscal year that come through on this statement. And then the big glaring one is there's no income up there from any of the local governments. That'll help us keep track as we move through the next couple quarters as to the contributions that come in. And for those in the audience, it's important to note, we request funding for our basic operations from all of those local governments. And that's what keeps the doors open for us. That's Ashley and I here, and our rent and that kind of stuff. The special projects come out of money that we receive from the state. Okay. Any questions on any of the financial report? That's all I've got on that, Jim. We have $36,031.89 in claims. In the email packet, I included individual email invoices for all of these claims. They were all for already existing budgeted items. Ones to note, we supported a couple individuals for the Indiana Watershed Leadership Academy. I'll speak on that a little bit later. We had a couple of our water monitoring sensors that went down, and we had to get them refurbished and replacement. So we had a couple of those costs in there. Otherwise, MACOG services is the big, basically our my salary and our rent and that kind of stuff from the first quarter of the fiscal year. And then also the service. Oh, sorry. Workshop registration. We got a Michigan irrigation workshop coming up. That one's on there too. That's any questions on the claims? Like I said, 36,000. Yeah. That's all I've got on that then, Jim. I didn't include all those invoices in the printout that for all the printouts for all the packets, but I have 2 copies here if anybody wants to see the individual invoices. Obviously, the big expense on there is for our strategic planning project, our technical strategy, which we'll talk about that later in the meeting today. That was actually received back in October. But because of the size of that one, we're waiting on payment until after the claims are approved here.
All right, we have a motion for the minutes, financial report, and approval of claims.
So Randy Flex, the county.
Any discussion? All right, motion carried. All right, we're going to move on to old business, water monitoring program.
Good. Thanks, Jim. I guess got a couple things to keep this brief today. I would say water monitoring, for those who are new, is kind of been the backbone of the commission of the year. Other than convening and bringing folks together, water monitoring is the most consistent thing we've done since it was created. We have expanded what we do in the way of monitoring to include not just water quality, but to also look at water quantity and flow, stream discharge. So we'll talk a little bit about each one of those things just a bit. First, on the quality side of things, the biggest thing that we're doing, or not the biggest, but it's maybe potentially the most unique, is we've got 12 sites, both in Indiana and Michigan, shown on the map here, where we are annually collecting biological data, collecting bugs, essentially, to help understand how these tributaries are doing in the way of overall health. It's a more cost-effective way than actually going out and doing chemistry sampling, going to the lab, all that kind of stuff. Doesn't tell you all the same things, but it does give you a really good idea of the overall health of the system. These sites were located in such a way as to add to existing efforts that are going on. So what you don't see on this map are a whole bunch of sites downstream of these, namely covered up by those two photographs of what the sampling units that get deployed in the streams look like. That's what those two photos are of. But there's a whole bunch of sites that are managed by one of our members, Dara Deegan, and the Elkhart South Bend Aquatic Biology Program. It's got a long name, but they're out there doing both bug and fish sampling in the more urbanized part of our watershed. So namely Goshen, Elkhart, South Bend. We're trying to add to that data. That stuff's available on our web map. I got a link there. That'll be live in the presentation. You can go and check that out there. Just a couple notes that I made. One is that we still have not received the invoice for our 2025 collection and bug processing. As those of you who've been coming a lot know, we lost we lost someone who started this program for us and used to actually go out in the field and take Ashley with her and get wet and collect the bugs and do all that kind of stuff. Now we're hiring that out to a company in Ohio that comes here and all the way to Illinois, does all kinds of stuff. But anyway, we haven't received their invoice, which will be larger. It's for last year's work, but they don't send it until they send you the results, which should be this spring. And that should be about $21,000. And I expect that in early spring with the data. The other thing I had on this, two, I guess. One, Jim was there, Chris was there, a couple of us attended a water data hub event. I probably sent y'all invitations or emails to. It was down in Indianapolis, hosted by the Indiana Geologic and Water Survey, really trying to get at this new executive order that the governor put out about water. And it's one of the things it specifies in there that Indiana shall create a central hub for water data. Well, what does that look like? And what's that all about? And I mention it here because our web map is sort of our first stab, but it's evolving as to how it might look for our basin. A central hub for quality data, quantity data, data that the city of South Bend might be collecting, data that Dara's program is collecting, data that Steuben County, LaGrange. We got a lot of different sources for this stuff. Elkhart County Health Department. We want to try to have one place where it's all located. And, you know, I don't know if anybody who was there wants to say anything about it. I thought it was super thought-provoking about how we structure this thing. That's why I say evolving for ours is, you know, I don't think we're there yet by any means, but it definitely was a.
I was impressed with the amount of people are there, and Pat and Chris and myself and Matt. Like when you look around the room, Teamster Todd was there as well. We had pretty good representation. Not thinking of it, and I like the way it's set up. Like I think we'll see where it moves from here, but I think it's important to gather our information or data and have a collective piece to it. So thank you, Chris.
It was very thought provoking. You don't have any idea on the back end what takes place to get data to be equal.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just phenomenal, and we're really interested to hear other states and where they're at. I have contingent there. A lot of information, very well planned.
Right.
Ginger did an excellent job.
Definitely. You know, one of my takeaways from it, and I mentioned this on our Water Monitoring Council call, was that, and again, this is at the state level, was where this executive order stuff comes out of. And you think about once you get to that scale, there's definitely, you want to avoid duplicating where all this data is stored. And so it was more about a web where you're just pointing to the data. You're actually like kind of pulling it and retrieving it. You're not restoring it or like re-uploading it yourself. Well, that's all good when the entity that is doing the monitoring puts it online and has it in some way in a, I don't know, you don't even know the coding language they were talking about, where it's like RSS feed. I know that's not what it is, but it's like where you can go and get it. You can set your website up to already be pulling that data, so you don't have to update it. It does it itself. Well, in our case, most of our local entities aren't doing that. Like the data is still in a PDF somewhere or a spreadsheet if we're lucky. Like, so I see it as an opportunity for us as sort of a regional collaborator to be the way, you know, maybe that's part of the legwork or the work that the commission does or hires out or whatever, sponsors, is getting it online, you know, getting it so that the state can point to our data. Maybe that, you know, we become that. So anyway.
Yeah, one of the big things there.
Yeah.
Now,
Like what you have to do to keep the data uniform in a way that those sites can go out and get it. Yeah. Interesting stuff.
I think that's the
yeah.
piece, like the follow through piece. That sometimes we get things right, but we have all this information. We do. Where does it go and how to handle it? And then that other side of maybe we don't want anybody to see this.
Oh yeah.
And so
Yeah.
then, so you have to be kind of cognitive that you have to understand that some of this information, and I think we're at the point where I think the information is out there. It's real. People know, rather than trying to hide this stuff and in order to make it all work, you gotta have it all. And so it's that gathering that information. But I like that piece where it was, and it was very interesting that in Illinois was there.
Yeah.
Looking because they're were the tag team on this as well.
Where are they going from? So after this meeting, what
Yeah.
the next step?
Right. So we had a presentation from the DNR deputy director there, who is like basically saying, hey, DNR has been tasked with this, so we're going to come up with it, or, you know, essentially they'll outsource it, I'm sure, to someone, you know, that's specialized, that's probably worked for the state of New Mexico and also done work for California or what, you know, there's entities that have helped other states with this. So, but what Ginger is trying to do is make sure that it was a lot of breakouts and work that took place that like we can feed DNR some of this information and you know, we encourage, nudge, push, whatever, that it is mindful of some of these things that, you know, the users are aware of or the collectors are aware of.
So are they creating like a task, like a workout or breakthrough that they're going to be pulling from different solutions?
I don't know on that particular project. Not sure. Chris and I both serve on the Water Monitoring Council. We haven't necessarily been contacted by them about it or anything. You know, I certainly made a point to talk to the deputy director while they were there and, you know, say, hey, we're working on something like this at our scale. But who knows? I don't know yet, Alicia. Some of the other things from the executive order will be handled that way. But the data hub part is to be determined. Jim hit on two things that I can't resist. I'm sorry. He said one was like, we collect the data, sure, and even if we can get it online, so what? Like, what does it mean? What, like, and that's where, you know, we've had folks, namely Kate Barrett, for those of you who've been around for a while, who, you know, was a biologist, an ecologist, who, you know, was able to help to some extent with data analysis. And that's really the data hub isn't that. It's going to allow for someone to access the data so they can do analysis. And our web map is trying to set it up for a little bit of both. Like there's a graphing function to it. So you can do the graphing, which is, you know, not, it does tell a story in a different way than just raw numbers. You're making a picture with it, you know, so we are at least doing like sort of one step of analysis that's sort of kind of built into it. But we all know that the narrative and the explanation of why this matters and what it's connected to is what most of us need to understand what it is. I mean, you know, yeah, having, we have water quality standards as a line kind of going across the graph. So you kind of know a little bit about exceedance, like when do we go beyond? I mean, it's helpful in that way. But I'm just saying there's definitely a loss and sort of a vacuum around telling a story with the data even after it's been collected. And that leads me to the second thing, and that Jim mentioned, which is around sort of ownership and reluctance to share a little bit. And I've actually come to understand this, and I hate to put you on the spot, Dara, but it's just too good of an example of what you're dealing with. And that is where the data collector is also the one charged with doing the analysis and telling a story with it. And so they do a lot of work in digging through the data. And in his case, a historic, sort of like a legacy knowledge of how things have been, and that comes to the story that we're going to tell with the data. But when then you just put your data out there in this most raw format, and someone else takes it and tells a different story with it that suits, and it doesn't even have to be nefarious, but that's the worst case scenario, is where it's like, oh, I'm going to use this data. It's like, that's the last thing you want. And so it's not that they don't want to share the story. They want the story shared as broadly and used, but there is sort of a like, that's not what it says. That's not, that. And I think that there is something of a lot of us, you do a lot of work on something and you put a lot into it. There's an ownership that's kind of like, man, I don't know if I want to just like put it out there. I don't know. I don't know. Did I capture that in some of the things you dealt with? Okay. All right. Okay, good. I don't hold it against you at all, man. That's all I got on quality, Jim. Can I do quantity next? Try to keep it a little bit briefer. There is a link on this one too, to just the link just goes to a Google map of all the places in the basin where we're collecting continuous either water level or ideally discharge flow data in the basin. The colors, which don't come through here very good, but you can tell if you go to that map, some of them are our sites. We've got 8 sites out there where we're collecting. Built into that is a link to actually go to the live site where you can get the data. USGS is the big one. That's the other color, and 2 colors, because some of them are just level up and down. We sponsor a gauge on Waldron Lake. It's a lake level gauge rather than a discharge. But all those little pins on there also have links to where you can go and get the data. Eventually that's, we roll that into the web map too. The notes I had on this, I mentioned it in the financial report that we had to replace a couple of our sensors. We've got 8 of them out there. I could tell you all about why each one of these sites is important. But last meeting, I told you all that I was kind of doing some investigation into really trying to get my head around the numbers. Like as our program grows, in terms of number of sites, and in 8's a significant one, about the 8 existing sites is almost $20,000 annually to maintain them. So you guys, I've said it every meeting, like maintenance it's not just the cellular bill to get the data out to the internet. Sometimes you got to replace the units. It's not just that. The biggest cost is that in order to convert level into discharge, you got to go out there and take measurements every year, 3 of them at least at the site. And that's what USGS does for their sites. So we're doing that at our sites, working with a company called Tritium that's local. And that's, that's in there. That's, $3,000 a year per site, roughly. It all depends on how much travel is involved. But anyway, I want to get a handle on that to think about hey, our budget, our scale, how much are we, because this stuff doesn't become very relevant. Now, for flood forecasting, it can be relevant immediately, and there is a value to that. But for sort of water availability and understanding quantity under the ground, as well as, what we can expect, you have to have a long period of record. You got to collect the data for a long time. Otherwise, it's not really that useful. So I'd hate to see us invest, and it's not that the sensors are that expensive, but invest in taking all these measurements and getting them out there. And then we can't afford to keep this going. So I wanted to get a handle, and I feel like I've got a lot better sense of that now. I mentioned about $20,000 to keep our existing program going in a robust state. And then I would say we would plan on about $8,000 to $9,000 for the establishment of a new site. And then after that, about $3,000 annually, I think is a good way to think about this. We've budgeted for a few new sites this year, and I do intend to do that. I'll mention here now in this slide, I guess, been meeting with the city of Goshen. Is Jason here? Jason, if you guys are, Jim, if you're okay with this, can I ask Jason to say a little bit about what, Jason, if you would, just kind of like what the city of Goshen's interest in partnering with us on some new sites are. Introduce yourself too.
Jason Golden, stormwater coordinator for the city of Goshen. The interest that we have is mainly from one thing, understanding how much water is coming from the Goshen city lots of part of the 600 square miles of land that drains to that point. There's a lot of water that comes to our community. And we have a GPS gauge on the Elkhart River that's downstream of our park. So we know, we have a good idea of like how much water is going to the Elkhart River, but we don't know how much water is coming towards us until it's through us. And so the opportunity to, we've been looking at how since 2018 when we had this first goal, we've been looking at how do we understand, how do we prepare the flow. And we looked at water monitoring gauges, how much that would cost, but it made sense to look at the partnership that this that the state is for the use water. So when Matt started talking about strategic partnership study, what that could bring and the potential for additional monitoring stations, city jumps on that because it makes sense for us to do our components to support the program as well as to support components. And so that what this would do, it's like how much water is coming through Turkey Creek, through the upper branches of the Elkhart River before it gets to us. So we have an adjustments. And further emergency folks to get people out of the line areas to give us warning before we actually have to. So it's a program that benefit us specific also that case.
And the program Jason's talking about, we, for a few years, commission members probably know about that. We've been offering like a cost share where if the city can pay for the first years of establishing that curve, you know, those field measurements, the commission will buy the sensor, install it and maintain it, the cell signal for ideally in perpetuity. So it's a sharing of getting it started and getting it out there. And then our goal is to keep that going in the future. The other thing I think that's important, so we had, there's a technical memo that's already been delivered to us as part of the technical strategy that we got that had some preliminary monitoring recommendations. And so that's kind of what we went through is there crossover? Because part of that technical memo is it's not necessarily like, hey, where are the best places to put gauges to protect Goshen from flooding or to give them early warning on flooding. It was actually a lot around where are the best places to put gauges to eventually understand the aquifer, to eventually understand, because the divide of the aquifer, there's like these little, almost what I think of as sub watersheds, but like sub aquifers. Groundwater gets a little bit over my head, but they definitely, so when, like right now there's, you know, this water availability study being done across the state in different places we'll talk about, but it's largely based on USGS gauge data. And so collecting data on flow and discharge actually helps us understand what's going on under the ground. And you need to know where those divides are to make sure you're monitoring both of the little sub aquifers and not just one. So we found some crossover, and it's actually, we want to talk to, you know, Phil, you're here, surveyor's office. I came to a drainage board meeting and a couple of your guys were talking about, hey, we've been trying to do some gauging too. So I want to make sure that we're not overlapping, or ideally, if we can put some of these in, or if you've got a better system that you're using, you know, do that. But we want to coordinate with you guys and the city of Goshen on a couple sites that are sort of not on the main stem of the Elkhart. Like I'd like to get some around New Paris and Turkey Creek, and that's especially relevant, I think, to Kosciuszko County. And I've talked to Jim about where we would locate those. But in this case, we're looking at Horn Ditch and Rock Run Creek. Well, Horn is a tributary to Rock Run, I think. And so that's the arm that they felt like the arm of the Elkhart River that they know the least about, which has the potential to impact a lot of commercial activity, transportation, like, some different things. I don't know if that is fair summation or anything on that.
County, Dover County, which. That's the 2006. Oh, sorry. So having a gauge on district. Be ready to their district, which we know this. Same with rock road. So you are downstream of the rest of this gauge. So you went out of first 20. So have that percentage, just not just.
So Jason mentioned the two-stage ditch here in Elkhart County, not that there's only one, but two-stage ditch here in Elkhart County and some of the benefits that they've seen from it. I know we've got some in Steuben. I don't know any other. That triggered me. Been getting notices on grants, thanks to John Marshall, who you'll hear from later, I think. But there is still Great Lakes Restoration Initiative money out there for implementation projects that are about moving dirt and or buying land, acquiring things, actually, not building tools and doing planning and doing outreach and some of the things that, we're often thinking of. And I was thinking about Tuesday, if any of my surveyors in the room have ideas of, places where it would be beneficial, or that where it in particular would help address some things, or you have landowners adjacent that might be amenable to it, where it wouldn't feel like a takings, because it does require a little bit of that easement to create the floodplain bench. But basically, if you think there might be an opportunity in your county, especially if the money comes from outside, comes from the federal government, let me know about it, because we may be able to be a connector and or a grantee for some funds, some restoration funds, where two-stage could be considered floodplain reconnection. At least offer a proposal asking for it, and then we could get some infrastructure improvement paid for with grant funds that don't have to come out of the drain fund. So let's talk if that's of interest. Sorry, that was a tangent from that one, Jim. Not that you're surprised. That's all I've got on if anybody has any questions for me or Jay or anybody.
Thank you, Jay. Ready to run the watershed study?
Yeah. And I couldn't resist leaving this this slide in. You've all seen it a bunch of times. It's my big dream. Been pushing for an assessment of the impact that changes in the land have on the water, on hydrological conditions downstream. That type of an assessment, it would expand on the methodology we've been using for drainage benefit apportionment already. It would be like a supercharged version of that, is the way I see it. Ideally, it would be living, in the sense that it's updated regularly and can account for changes over time, not just static one-time assessment, but something that can be new information can be integrated as it becomes available. Potentially crowdsourced information, potentially information that we can't get at scale, but that people know and are willing to share. And then the last thing I put on here in the notes is ideally it would be learning. Like it could be smart AI. It's on a lot of our minds if you watch the news these days. And the idea that we're collecting a lot of information. We've got all these gauges out there. Weather data is being collected. It seems like we could use AI to refine how this thing understands the way water moves in our basin, based on changes in the land, changes in the floodplain, wetland law. As we track those changes, management changes ideally, you would expect to see a difference in the downstream gauge eventually when it gets, if not through changes that do occur rather incrementally, you should certainly be able to see them in two watersheds that are very different. So we take one watershed that's got one type of drainage practices or land management practices, and we look at another of similar scale, maybe even similar soils, but it's managed differently, apply the same amount of rain to it, and we see that the stream responds differently. So having something like that's been my dream. Couldn't resist putting it in there. But I got to say, and the consultants pushed back, you guys pushed back, like that's not the only kind of a watershed study that would be valuable. So, rather than throwing all of our money at the full-blown development of something like this last year, we decided to look at a couple of other types of watershed studies that we could get at and look at for each of these types of things, you know, what kind of methodologies would be involved, what data would be used, what level of effort, what kind of cost estimates, you know, that kind of stuff. And so we started the strategic planning project, this technical strategy that we've been working on with Interra and Northwater. It definitely is going to have that assessment of green infrastructure as one of the things we look at and try to scope out, get a cost for or a rough idea of what it might entail. But it also had three other components, and one of them sort of fell off, and that's on the slide, that water availability study. It's being done by the state. So after we commissioned, it was like, you know, we're going to do that already. And I don't know if, actually it is Interra, who is doing the study for our region. So they broke the state up into different regions. We're lumped in with the Maumee, so Fort Wayne and Northeast Indiana is kind of our study region. And they kicked off that last month. Some of you were on a call. I sent out a note about that. They've been, what did he say? They had the kickoff meeting, working on the demand forecasting model, and they will be conducting stakeholder outreach events over the next few months. And he reassured me that the St. Joe River Basin Commission would be included in those because on the presentation, there was it wasn't clear who all was part of the, you know, sort of stakeholders or the study committee. So I got a report from them, a little update that, you know, they've started to pull together the bones of the study. We had a couple meetings, one with the city of Elkhart about flood forecasting, city of Goshen about the water monitoring. We already talked about that. The executive summary, I brought a couple copies of it. He shared that with me from the survey that was done. We had a presentation at our last meeting about the stakeholder and member survey. We got an executive summary from that. And I think that's about where things are on the study. If anybody has any questions, be happy to take them. That's all I got on that, Jim.
Okay, we're on the new business. Elections.
Yeah, so first thing I've got on the slide is explain our sort of customary escalator thing we got going, where for the last, I don't know, almost as long as I've been here, we kind of have another custom of folks moving up the chain. So if you were the vice chair, you become the chair. If you were the treasurer, you become the secretary, that kind of thing. And first thing I do is check in with those existing officers to see if they are interested and willing to move on up. And there is a name, you know, you don't necessarily know sitting out there in the crowd who our officers are. You know, Jim chairing the meeting, he finally gets to take a break from dealing with me so much. And Jewel Weiss has been our vice chair, agreed to move on up and be the one taking my heat. But there's a name missing. We typically have three folks, and that person is here. So Ray, can you speak for yourself? Ray Hoover has been serving as our secretary over the last year. And we had some discussions when he came on the board that sort of forecasted this for me. But Ray, can you say a little bit about your lack of willingness? I don't even say lack of willingness. You said you would do it if you had to, but tell him, Ray. Introduce you. Yeah.
Well, thanks, Matt. Yeah, years ago, he approached me and wanted to know if I would sit on the board. I told him that, guarantee that. I'll be up for election again here shortly. Just prefer, I've got a lot of iron in the fire. That somebody else takes the secretary spot to be back to being a political member. The time that I've been here. But I threw back whatever he needs. But then you try to find somebody who wants to. I talked to him today, he said that he's done that. So happy.
Ray, we even talked a little bit about some potential people.
Yeah, we did. I can't tell you who they are. Ones that are having people that, I made a couple suggestions, that he made a couple suggestions. His suggestion went out, so. But I don't know that for a fact.
Okay. Well, thank you, Ray.
Can't read the board up there. I could see the board a lot better than I used to be. But everything's blurry. Like Sarah.
Sarah and Jewel have agreed to move up to the next spot. But one of the things that we talked about, Ray, was that, you know, the first thing I think about when like, who are we going to is attendance, like who comes to these meetings. So if you do not want to get on the escalator, better stop coming because if you come to these meetings, that's the first people I look at to like, well, who's going to, you know, be there for us to lead the meeting in a few years. And Randy Sexton is someone who's been here a lot, and I had some conversations with him. So we talked about Randy, and Ray and I did. And when I reached out to Randy, he definitely said he'd be willing to serve in Ray's spot and be that vice chair. And Sarah said, Sarah, who, by the way, I got a text from her this morning. She came down with a bug this morning and had to go home sick from work. She couldn't be here, but she reassured me that she is still interested in serving and, you know, like, didn't feel like that would be jumping over her or something like that. She was quite comfortable with you stepping into Ray's spot. So anyway, that was sort of new. We haven't had someone say, you know what, I'd rather get off. And I won't take it personally, Ray, and I certainly do appreciate the input you give at these meetings. So, but the thing I always have to do is look at the attendance, who's been coming, and find someone to step into that, what is it, the treasurer's, the spot, which is the first one that opens up. And I was looking at there, and the first person that I called and talked to was Jim Moyer. He's here today, Kosciuszko County Surveyor, who said he would be willing to get on the escalator. And I don't know if you want to say anything about that, Jim, or if you want to change your mind. No, good. So we do have we do have a slate, but of course we want to open any and this is just, I needed to know as a director that we have a potential slate. So I've got no bearing on this, but there are at least, Jim, some folks to take these offices. Yeah.
Would it be appropriate to move the slate? Acceptance of this slate?
I would think you have to like open from the floor, just to at least ask. Brandy's here. I saw her come in. Okay.
Yeah, I would say, we can start with asking if there's any nominations signed on the slate.
Right.
And if there aren't, then you can move to accept the slate of officers, but you gotta ask, please.
Thank you, Mark.
So is there, we'll open it up if there's any nominations. I think the group is supportive. Want to step in. Okay, want to take that as here, John. Acceptance of the slate and post. So I would offer a motion.
I make a motion that we accept this slate as posted then last year.
Second, Mark Petrowski.
Okay. Any discussion? All right, very good. All vote on the slate. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries.
All right. And I take this opportunity to thank you, Jim. You know, I hope you don't think you're getting off by not being the chair anymore. We've been working together on a lot of really cool things. And okay. Well, I've really appreciated your service and all of you guys that come to these meetings. I know you don't have to. This is voluntary, and it really means a lot to me, and I appreciate you being here. So thank you.
Right. Communication, connection, data collection. I'm gonna let Matt kind of introduce and throw this out there.
All right.
So
Thank you. I kind of surprised Jim with this one. I think it was a last minute thing. John Marshall, your name is on that slide up there, and I'm going to ask you to come up here in a minute. John Marshall from DJ Case. We just met well, I guess no, we met about a year ago, I would say, or more. Yeah, and it has led to some really exciting things. So John's going to tell you about his company and who he works for. We actually met at something. It was a personal encounter through a friend, but really cool stuff. And it's got us thinking about some things. And you know, for a lot of you in here, especially the soil and water conservation districts, there's this, you know, how do we connect with private landowners? How do we communicate this message that the land is what makes the difference in the water? And then, you know, I mentioned it earlier, like there's a lot of data we don't have. Like there's a lot we don't know about what's going on out there that isn't available from a satellite. And so getting people to talk to us and to tell us what they're doing has been something I think water people have been interested for a long time. And for those of you who've been in this world, I think of the campaign down in Indianapolis, Clean Water, Clear Choices, was it, you know, where, you know, you put in a rain barrel and you get some recognition. You put it on a website, someone go look at a map and see where the rain barrels are. And you know, there's some kind of a driver to bring people who are doing things that you might call above and beyond, doing conservation, to the table, to highlight them, to acknowledge them, to ideally credit them in some way for what they're doing for us, because that's the reality here is, and you don't even have to intentionally do this. I drove this home. I keep talking with John. It's not even people who choose to do no-till or choose to build a rain garden. It could just be someone who doesn't cut down the back 40, who just leaves that woodlot there because they can't afford to do anything with it maybe. But that woodlot is doing work for us. And I'm, you know, beyond the water, it's storing carbon. It's doing a lot of things that we all need to breathe and that we all need to not be suffering from floods and or have access to water to sell to a data center. Whatever it is, there's a natural green infrastructure out there that's working for us. And I've been super curious about mapping that, identifying it, getting at it. And so John reached out to me and we had some brainstorming, you know, maybe initially about that sort of green infrastructure inventory kind of thing, but then it's grown from that. And John had a handout that was available. So anyway, John, come on up and tell us a little bit about what we've talked about, what you're doing with the company and that kind of thing.
All right, thanks, Matt.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. Thank you, Jim, for the opportunity to come and talk with you today. First of all, let me say that good news is I'm not here to sell you anything. I'm here to ask for your approval or support on anything. I guess, you know, if there's anything I'll ask of you, it's just to share your ideas. I'm interested in your opinion, sharing ideas. Basically, just aimed to introduce myself, to introduce DJ Case and Associates. So DJ Case and Associates was founded in 1986 in Mishawaka, Indiana. It's a damn shame that we have almost the exact same vision as you. We're in the same watershed. We've been in the same watershed for about 40 years now. You know, both of us. I don't think we've ever done work. We do work nationally. We work with the Platte River Recovery Education Program, Upper Mississippi River Basin Association. We work in conservation very broadly, a lot in fish and wildlife conservation. We run FWS.gov, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service website. So we're doing a lot of things nationally, but we've never really worked here in our own watershed. That's a damn shame. So met Matt, as you mentioned, a year or so ago. I just happened to cross paths and ended up getting together last week because I said, hey, there's this Lake Michigan coastal you know, grant
is there anything that we could work on together? We got together and just started brainstorming. Decided, because the pre-proposals are due tomorrow, that we didn't have, the idea, the time to get our ideas together. But we did, do some quick brainstorming and kind of wanted to continue it. So Matt and I plan to, sit down and talk more about these things, talk about some ideas. I have a handout that was up at the table there. If anyone needs one, raise your hand. It says Clean Clear Champions. Janelle and I used to work together many, many years ago for Indiana DNR. So we looked at faces and said, somewhere. I remember being out on a boat on the lake Michigan. So anyway, a little bit about DJK. So as I mentioned, we work nationally on conservation issues. I would kind of describe, as you're talking about data, and I heard mention of fair, findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable, right? That's fair data. And Matt talked about how do you tell a story with data?
Yeah.
That's where we are. That's our space, not just data, but we're at the space of engaging people, landowners, policymakers, you name it, on issues of conservation. We're not an environmental conservation firm. We're not going out and putting the sensors out and those kinds of things, or even designing that. But we're looking at how do you take that data, how do you take that information and convert it to action on the ground? How do you tell a story with it? And specifically, the idea that I think Matt and I were kicking around and is described there in that sheet is a concept of how do we tell the story of data to an individual landowner about their land? How does your land fit into the complex? How do your actions affect people downstream? And then kind of on the other side is how do we communicate to people, water users, people who are interested, who are downstream, who are anglers, boaters, just members of the community, how these clean and clear champions, as we term them, those people who are taking action on their land, how it's affecting them. So this is a very rough concept. We put together a really quick prototype. If you happen to be able to get online sometime and take a look at it, it's not fully functional at all. It gives you a sense of some of the ideas that we're thinking about. And that is, how many of you have used Zillow to identify, look at your house or look at your property? Most of them. How many have claimed their house on Zillow? Actually gone on and claimed your property? A few more. So we kind of bounced around this idea of like Zillow for water quality.
All right.
How do we present information not just about your real estate, as in how much is it worth and what's the square footage of your house, but what are the water quality data points and publicly available data, things that you can probably get in other locations to look for it, but a place where you can say, okay, this is how my property is connected, and then be able to claim that and add information to it, supplement that information. So here are the kinds of actions I'm taking on this property. Here's the things that I'm most interested in, being presented with information about what might be available for incentive programs. There are cost share grants, those kinds of things that might be available. So again, rough concept at this point. We talked about using some basic social science theories, dealing with gamification and promoting clean and clear champions, those that are taking action on their property to improve water quality and deal with quantity. The idea would be to not only give them a place to connect and perhaps take action to do better, but also communicate the work that they're doing to downstream. So again, very rough idea. Matt, you want to?
Yeah. So something we've talked about lately, and I'm sure we talked about it right away, was around kind of what the commission has historically done in the way of kinds of work and projects, and how this is a little different. And it's something that I've struggled with coming from a nonprofit to this. in that I really see our target audience, like the people that we're trying to reach and educate if we're going to do that, but really more understand, is a fairly small group of people. It's like the commission, and then like staff, other people, administrators, sort of that are responsible for public water infrastructure management in some way. Now, recognizing that health departments are issuing septic permits, soil and water conservation districts are working with private landowners, so it's not, thank God that it's not just the pipes and the ditches, but that our service, or what I think we're providing, is typically something to those managers, as opposed to doing a watershed awareness campaign and like, we're going to go and reach the public and we're going to go talk to about cost share opportunities, stuff that's often, a lot of what I'm thinking of is done by districts, soil and water conservation districts themselves. But I see an opportunity here, not that we shouldn't do that, because in fact, if you look at the executive summary of what it said the commission should be doing, education and outreach is what people want to see us do. Now, it was heavily weighted towards stakeholders rather than members who completed the survey. But where I see this as unique is that it can serve our membership in a way that is sort of twofold. One, maybe the districts, maybe this is something that, the districts are going to get more out of this than other stakeholders if they feel that the commission is the right host or the right person to sort of take on an effort like this, be the sponsor of it, and kind of manage a program like that, because it's not just unique to one county, that it's for the whole region. But also because of what I was speaking about earlier. And so when I think of our drain, so it's not just districts. When I think of our drain guys and stormwater pipe managers, this could potentially allow us to collect information that would make you better at your job, that would inform how you manage the infrastructure, because we know more about what's coming at us, more about what it is serving. And there's a lot of unknown, and we've been going through it, certainly in LaGrange. I'm thinking of you, Corey, in the sense of when you go and ask people for more money, Stu Ben's going through it right now too. When you go to increase the drain assessment because it hasn't been done in 20 years or 30 more, people are, frustrated, and they want to know more about why. Well, if we're going to have to pay this, what is it about? Well, if we look upstream and see what's kind of going on in the way of land use and understand that it's not all the same and there's different things being done. And of course, I'm thinking about best management practices and where people are doing things on their private land that are changing the way they use the public service. It's not a far reach to think that we might design that infrastructure more differently, or we might build them differently eventually down the road, that kind of thing. So the potential data collection is, I think, in the wheelhouse of the commission. Like, that is clearly something that we do, which is probably why, I've been like, I don't know about that sign stuff, but man, this website thing, could be really useful. But they work together, and I don't know. I want to say, and then I also want to tease these folks something you told me just recently. Although you haven't done any, super local work, for the most part, it sounds like there's maybe some coming, at least at the state level, with Indiana. Can you say a little bit? Yeah.
So we just embarked, literally in the past few days, hired the Department of Agriculture to do capacity assessment for SJRBC. So we'll be in contact with many of you in that vein to do that research. So that's going to be a year-long project. I don't have a whole lot of detail about myself. I haven't been personally involved in it, but EJ Case and Associates. By the way, we have 25 staff members, 5 PhDs, 9 master's level. We're really a mixture of folks who are trained in environmental and biological sciences, foresters, biologists, who have a penchant for communications, a penchant for social science. We have PhD level social scientists on staff. And then we also have folks who are really great web developers and programmers who really just have a penchant for conservation. They make more money doing work in other places, but really like working with types of organizations. A big mix of folks that we are going to be in contact with, I think all 92 of the SWCDs on that particular route. So please.
Awesome. Jim, do you have anything, or you, anybody? Yeah.
Kind of curious if anybody, again, this rough idea, and we
Yeah.
can go into it in detail, in this sheet that I handed out, but is there any ideas that you have? Is there anything that resonates about that idea? Things that Matt and I can continue brainstorming about, thinking about going forward? Sure.
I will try to think, one idea or some idea that you're talking about between landowners and house representatives, using common messaging and stuff like that is being a bigger benefit as a landowner and not a government official. Would need to develop consistent set of messaging and kind of lexicon, if you will, that all of the different staff within the county government. So the building
Yeah.
surveyors, WCD, the health department, the sports coordinator, they all engage with the public in a fairly similar way and understanding each other's boundaries, which are not like all usually, so their boundaries of the state and federal. From the perspective of a resident of the county, I continually hear frustration. They went to the county. The fact is, they didn't go to the county. They went to a county. And they didn't get the answer. They got solved and got should have been solved. A lot of that has more to do with the fact that really multiple units. Their problem may well need to be addressed by more than one unit of government. Counting on them to talk to each other. Or a horizontal view of the messaging challenge, if you will, yes, as opposed to the top-down.
What the messages are and how those, and how you connect the right people at the right time. Yeah, really good point. It's actually at the core of a lot of the work that we do nationwide is look at talking with landowners. And when it comes to scientists, government officials, you all are very, very smart people. All the people that we work with are very smart. Don't always have a good idea of what's going to resonate. Right. So one of the things that we do, our social scientists do, is help develop those messages, help identify what you want to deliver as policy, policy officials, government officials. What do you want to deliver? What do you want people to know? And what are the people that you're trying to communicate with? What actions do you want to do? What's going to motivate them? What information do you need? How do you meet together? And so that's a lot of what we do kind of at a broad strategic level, is look at those kinds of messaging, and we're the communication channel to break it down. How do we bring it? In particular, we worked with major species issues in one of these, working with landowners on early successional forests and forests, the ideas that biologists, government officials have for what's going to motivate landowners don't find it. And part of what we do is come in and say, here are the messages. If you say things these ways, they're a lot more likely to get action than the ways that you natural.
If I could, Pat's comments got me thinking about some. So although Pat, maybe you are typically going, or your people you're talking to, they're going to the county, where my work and a lot of the natural resource manager types, there's 15 counties involved in this. And so you want to talk about horizontal, like I'm wanting that extended between counties. And that gets really interesting, and it's been fascinating. I'm thinking of a conversation we had, Corey, something that's going on in LaGrange that I think this meeting is an opportunity to get a little feedback on. How many of your counties do you know use Beacon Schneider Corporation for serving data to the public, like parcel lines, where the county drain is? Raise your hand. So Elkhart County, Steuben County, Noble, Kosciuszko, St. Joe does not. I know that. But does that mean is that all the rest? Am I missing anybody? LaGrange. Yeah, for sure. Okay. So everybody, and I think the St. Joe County is actually hosted out of the MACOG offices. So what do we say about St. Joe County? We can do it better ourselves. So the other thing that I'm interested in, how many of you all use I guess I'd call it like a taxing software called LOW, like your auditor imports things via LOW. So I saw Kosciuszko hand, Noble hand, Steuben too, and St. Joe. Elkhart, maybe? No? Anybody in Elkhart know? You say, Phil, do you know you don't, or you just not know? You don't. Okay. But otherwise, so 5 out of our 6 member counties are using the same provider for data, and then I'm particularly interested in parcel and drain data. And then they're also 5 of the 6 counties are using the same kind of software for getting those assessments, getting stormwater fees implemented, like those kind of things come through. And there's some really important sticking points on both of those things, or maybe not sticking points, but opportunities for integration across a basin. In how we serve our members that I've been curious about in my conversations that I've had. So thank you all for giving me a little bit of insight on that.
Matt,
Yep.
you mentioned the question.
Oh, no, I was just making sure Jim didn't.
Matt, you were mentioning just, that storytelling with data and data sharing, all that. I hear that every day in the work that we do. Data is so critically important. Data itself does not tell a story. AI is changing a little bit about how easy it is to analyze and those kinds of things, but probably almost on a daily basis, that's what I'm working with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service clients, USGS, is figuring out how do we take that data and share it. We work with Cornell University on a lot of their chronic wasting disease data, which you can imagine would be very, very sensitive. What are the agreements that we need to set on those things? And then how do we present that data to the public? So there's a lot to be considered there. It's not easy, but there's a lot of benefit to it. Ultimately, to be able to talk to somebody and say, here's the story that the data tell about your property, about your watershed, at whatever level. And from a policymaker's perspective, that you have the information that part of the concept that Matt and I have been kicking around is how do we do this in a non-regulatory way?
Yeah.
How do we get people to share data that supplements the public data set, supplements some of those services out there with what actions are taking place on the ground, in such a way that you might be able to use it for policy. That you might be able to better manage the drains and the infrastructure that you're doing. Lots to be considered there. Again, this was a rough idea that we bounced around. I hope you'll take a chance to look at the prototype site that is listed on the back of that sheet.
Yeah,
QR code on the sign there. And
really encourage you to check it. So the site they mocked up in like a week and a half, which is just kudos to your team. But it's not working in the sense that you click it and it's actually but man, it gives you an idea of what is possible with the kind of a backbone that I think we're already studying what could be in that backbone. So this could really be a really cool sort of next step with what we get out of our technical strategy. It's pretty exciting.
And I'm understanding you have a symposium coming up.
Yeah, we'll get them.
Somewhat on that as that comes around. Jim, is there anything else that you think I should cover? Okay,
cool.
I really appreciate the invitation. I really appreciate everyone's time. And Matt, thanks for brainstorming. I really appreciate it.
You bet. It's been fun. Thank you. All right.
I'm gonna make everybody, especially Matt, really nervous.
Uh-oh.
You're gonna get the Jim S. Dog and Pony Show.
Uh-oh.
I want to follow up a little bit on, can I set this where the owl is?
Yeah. People online want to see this, Jim.
So it hit me this morning. I was doing shorter, feeding the sows. And Matt and I discussed this, talked about, and I think this group is really neat and it's cool. And when I look around the room, there's a lot of different entities involved in this, and it comes down to vision. And so I always go back to you guys are good work together. But I use this as a vision, and this isn't magic. This is part of the course. But it creates a vision. And I think that's where we're at in this basic commission. When I look around, it's surveyors, county commissioners, mayors, health departments, different entities throughout the basin, and then the SWCD. And when I look at most, and John made a good point, a lot of this is regulatory. A lot of you got commissioners can set fines, mayors who bring people before the work. Health department gets nervous when people start walking out on the property, what's problems, surveyors, same way, right? It's the SWCD, and I'm gonna talk a little bit about and scale on some of our SWCD stuff. We're pretty unique because we're non-regulatory. And I think we're dealing with a lot of non-regulatory issues, but in a non-overwhelming. When you look at these are soil savers, and I use this as a vision, and the vision that we go out and do. People gotta see it. They gotta feel it. They gotta know what they're getting. And I think as SWCDs, we have an opportunity to look at this as what John presented, like it's a tool. And I'm not here to endorse it, but I'm here to encourage us to look into this because I think it builds that scorecard.
Yeah.
That we talked about years ago, how we built different tax incentives and different things like that. Like it's real convoluted in how we put all that together. I think a lot of times we overthink a lot. And I think sometimes the simplest actions get the most done. What I've seen, just perusing through what's been put together, it's simple. But it builds that scorecard that I think we can use. And I set out, point out like the SWCDs, our role in this is we could be that hub. We could be that broker, and let the basin kind of be the backbone and maybe the piece that comes in. Like, I don't know, it's all leverage. But I see this as being something that we can see and feel. I don't want to put more stuff in the basics basket because guess what? It's math. What I want Matt to do is have fun, do stuff. So I want to have the admin on water that's clean, that knows that, hey, I've got a basic commission. It's good work. I want him to have not getting run out. For us, the SWCDs, this is what we do, and it's not we want to create more work, it's we want to make our work we already do easier. And I think this is one of those things where many times I get really frustrated because I'm not able to pass the good stewards of land and doing it for a long time. Don't get the recognition, they don't get the pat on the back. And I think building scorecards, this recognition, throwing it on beacon and making a conservation layer, showing, because this example here is pretty simple. It's water right out of the faucet, soil we dug up, different types, soil health that we as SWCs all are involved with. But if I just talk soil health, commissioners, mayors, it doesn't designate. But it does when we talk about water quality, and it does when we start city of Goshen's looking at water quantity. Well, I've got the soil on this side, on the right side here, that is holding water. That adds to your scorecard. That, and they need a pledge, they need a badge, they need something that helps that little pat on the back. And so that's that vision, and so it all ties together. It's one of the reasons that we kind of gone with that, the water quality piece. Water quality of life, because that's what it comes down to. And then you have that holding capacity, but it builds on soil health. When I look around this room, they're all involved in many different land use practices, cities, and all, even Elkhart compared to LaGrange, similar, but yet different. And so different than normal. But our water all comes in and it's been done and haven't seen it.
Yeah.
And Eric is getting it in South Bend. And you take a company like this, and I really appreciate the local, conference group trivia that it's local. No, to our gauge is really cool. We ever get somebody wherever. I look at this play, DJ takes somebody's probably driving across Main Street or Cedar Street up to get there. They're driving over the water. We're sending everyone, when I look at Kosciuszko, everybody's sending a lot of through that at some point. It's the vision. Yeah, we got to see it. I think as SWCs, this is a great tool. I pulled a quote off of their website last night, and I think it kind of resonates on what we, because times have changed. Our partners are different than they were 30 years ago, maybe even 10 years ago. But I look around and I see a lot of cool partners that are involved. There are more people pooling resources in new ways. State. Where nobody cares how putting this stuff on the land themselves. I think we gotta be able to pack those guys with that. I have a new understanding. This fall, I kind of took it up on my approach. We have a lot of options in our area. Put cover crops on, and a lot of them were there. And so I knew where they'd be in 6, 7 o'clock when they're in the fall. I had the luxury. I got a vehicle. I drive out. I go in and just shake their hand because I saw after they chopped them, they put cover crops out. Like I'm kind of 40. I'm kind of 38. I'm kind of 6. Just drove every morning, but 1 or 2. Gave my, hey, we got a whole program. They already shook their hand. Every one of those guys submitted for an incentive program. But if they wanted, I don't know if they wanted, but somebody acknowledged. You should. I just went in and shook their hand. Didn't take much of the time, and didn't even hand the paper. You interested? Yeah. Hey, mail it. They made them think. And so I think that's where we're at. And that's going to be some needs. We're already doing it. I think we can use this as a tool, as a guide, as a help piece to again, help build the work that we're already doing and help us out and use you guys as support and commission to help maybe funding your project and create those recommendations to honor some of those long-term conservation programs. To make this, we live in a reactive world, and this is one of those we can actually be proactive on how we do our stuff. So,
Jeff, yeah, please.
When John contacts you about that needs assessment, I need all of that. To
Yeah.
him that because that is what that needs assessment is looking for. It's just what you said.
Yeah.
And the rest of the districts in the room, please share that kind of information when John and his group contacts you.
Yeah.
They're in watershed, they're 12 blocks from the river. They could walk, and, you know, when I look at all that, it's really a cool, piece, but.
And you're referring a lot to what's possible in the way of the tool and the work or whatever, but you got to understand, like, what you're doing, what you just did is also a huge, that's the commission right there, meaning for the surveyors to see that, for health department to see which one thing, and I know a lot of us have seen this a lot, and you don't even maybe think about it, but you mentioned, oh, those are different soils. No, ideally, those are actually the same soil type. It's that they've been managed differently for the last 5 to 20 years, and that's how they behave differently. And so for a lot of us to see it, maybe, you know, oh yeah, and originally it was about water quality. Oh man, I don't keep that stuff out of my lake. We got to keep this good for the fish, you know. And then it was like, wait a minute, there's the reality that, like, for the landowner, well, they don't necessarily care that it does that, except for, wait a minute, you know, what's my resilience like, or my profitability in terms of inputs and all that kind of stuff. And you can maybe think about losing topsoil. Where, you know, another step that's being taken here today is understand, like, if you're a drain manager, if you're responsible for dipping ditches and you got that water coming compared to that water, like, which one's going to cost more? What am I going to spend more money on? So if you don't think that the two landowners should be treated differently in terms of the you know, apportionment of benefits, man, it kind of doesn't look like it when you look at that. And then we got this water availability stuff around data centers or fish farms or, you know, whatever, heavy irrigators. The other thing that this little slake test doesn't show, which is powerful, this thing is powerful. But when they bring the rainfall simulator out and do the same things, different soil types or different management scenarios or cover scenarios, and you see that coming off the front. Anybody, you know, Jim's, I did not know this was happening. This is so exciting. I love it. His dog and pony show, my dog and pony show, usually it's just a graphic, or not a graphic, but a picture of a rainfall simulator, and you see the buckets off the front, and they look like that. One's clear, one's so dirty, and you're like, whoa. But the real reveal, the real thing that matters to the landowner is when they take the little board off that's hiding the buckets that were underneath the soil. So what this doesn't show is that had you tried to put rain on top of that soil, not only does it run off dirty versus run off clean, not nearly as much runs off. It soaks in and goes into the ground to resupply the aquifer. Like, if we're going to be wanting to sell water for data or irrigating or whatever, man, we got to put it in somewhere. You know, it's got to get soaked in, and in that sort of messaging. And I think for us to see that as this collective group it's powerful. And man,
I think this is what I view as economic development. Like, I think that's where we're at. And I think agriculture has to take a strong look at the market. That's a market.
Yeah.
That's a tool. That's a commodity. That's economic development in communities. Cities can look at it. Counties can look at it. Water storage as clean water coming into your municipality facilities to drink. It's a lot cheaper to clean that water up when it's coming into clean already. And lake associations, I mean, Savannah, Coscow County, there's a large amount of lake associations that ought to be looking at ag producers to encourage that. And
they don't know how to talk to them though. Communication.
Networking with individuals, you know, Rankin's sitting right there with a bunch of lakes that, you know, it's a big issue for guys. And we got, whether it's a construction site, whether it's an ag field, inner city going down the drains with no pipes, that's already. So it's just the tool. Research that. DJ Case and Associates. This is something that I believe from an SJRBC side, we can look at from Clean Water Indiana, with piece, utilizing our capacity reports, different things we can do individually. I think each county needs to look at this and do it their way. What I do may not work for Martin. What Martin does may not work, and that's fine. But utilize a tool that helps encourage that. So,
Well, I appreciate you not wanting to put more on my plate so I can go have fun. Danielle will tell you that I never have a problem finding that. That is my main priority, is making sure I have fun. Yeah.
that's, I think when you look at the recreation piece to it, that comes down to that.
But the part of this where the districts really do step up is something that I talked to Martin about this 10 years ago. And that's around like, oh, we want to consider that stuff when we go to divide up a drain bill. Well, how do we know where that's going on? We don't. And so we can build a tool, which is what you're going to go look out of the handout. There's a tool with these guys going on. I know you had to make sure if you're in the audience, and Trevor, I'm assuming you did, make sure you sign that sign-in sheet. I'm so excited to see so many people here today. If you didn't get an email from me about the meeting, make sure you put your email on there too. I want to make sure I include you in the loop. So just a note on sign-in sheet if you can for those in the audience. But what we can ask folks to say, hey, I'm doing cover crops. This is where I'm doing it. They can draw a box. They can say that. But where the districts really can play a role is an auditing process, sort of like ask them to submit some pictures. Maybe it's at a desktop. Maybe you can do the verification at a desktop. And it's not saying like every single person's got to be verified. But the idea is that there is an expectation that someone might come and drive by, and if there's not any stubble there or there's no little shoots, like, did you really do a cover crops? Like what, where's your rain barrel? You said you had one. I don't see one. So I think that could be an arm where the commission is not going to staff that. We're not going to send someone from MACOG out to Steuben County to look for a rain barrel. But if there's a way for Steuben County to, and I'm not saying without compensation, like there can be a funding mechanism that pays for your time.
That's the leverage.
Right.
That it builds purpose.
Yeah.
And we are very blessed in this area. We have SWCs that have been taken care of. But I think that's because there's people there that they're passionate about it. We didn't just check the boxes. We're trying to do things that one makes our jobs easier, but also influences community. And so everybody represented here, kudos off to you guys for putting that stuff out there and making it happen. But always I think we have to keep challenging ourselves, and I think that is where that challenge comes in, and it helps build that resource.
Man, I've been involved in our conservation district for 20 years. This year, and you mentioned that, you also both of you used some key terms that I would keep in on. Is a naive of me to wish that a dedication to conservation doesn't just boil down to dollars and cents. And I do wish that maybe it's completely, that's the bottom line of everything. 10 years ago, I would have said, well, the Green County is sort of unique because I would say 60–70% of the privately held land resources are probably ours. So we don't have a lot of 1, 2, 3, 5,000 acre farms. We got a few, but I could name them, and I can probably name them on 10 fingers. And 10 years ago, I would have said, of our big crop farmers in the county, these are dedicated to no-till and, preventing this from happening right here, because they think it's the right thing to do. And then these guys over here are just in the office every year saying, well, what's different with the farm bill? How much money do I get for plant cover crops this year per acre? That's my motivation, okay? And I know I'm getting the whole growth, but this number's getting less than this number's getting.
There's two things, Martin. This is, I love the comment. Of course, I'm an idea, like, really? Can't you just do it because it's the right thing to do? Yeah, and sure, and some people are, but like the right thing depends on what your motivations are. And the reason we talk dollars so much, and you know this, is that it's that universal language. It's that horizontal. It's the part of the lexicon of how we're going to talk about this stuff is going to have to be in dollars, because that's the one thing that we can assume probably transcends all the different, like, I don't care whether you fish, I don't care whether you like to canoe, or if you have a data center, or what, you probably care about how much your taxes are. And so that's one reason. And then two, that what John's bringing up with this social science research is that there might be another one that's universal or almost universal. And that's the pat on the back. That's the like, that's the star, the sign, the what. We all want to be recognized. We all want to, look good. So maybe there is another way. And then, of course, the redefinition of where those dollars. So you're thinking of that pot of money keeps shrinking, but then the guys, CCSI, some of the cover, they're going to show you some numbers that, well, yeah, it's not about the incentive program. It's about the bottom line on your farm, Martin. That's not going away. The more longer you do, it's almost like planting a tree as a city. If you're a city, you plant a tree. It's like the only piece of infrastructure that actually gets better over time. It does more work for you the older it gets. Well, same thing here is like, theoretically, your farm gets more profitable the longer you do that thing. So, yeah, sorry.
I just want a little shot in the arm.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's easy to look at that and just consider, if you read the farm bill, it looks more like being welfare.
Right.
A farmer is uncomfortable with that language.
Oh,
they don't want to hear that. I work hard for my living, but.
And you're talking to the ones that are willing to go through coming in and dealing with the paperwork. Like, I know big farmers, they don't even bother. Yeah, they're leaving money on the table, but I'm not going to sit through all that stuff. I'm not, but now if they do tune in, now all of a sudden the ears do perk up when it comes to profitability talk. Like, not about programs, it's about practices, like from just from how you run your farm. Should I move on, Jim?
Thank you guys for allowing me to.
You guys, I figured since elections are over, I have nothing to do with the last one. Get thrown out of Warren Jewel, which might have to take over if I get thrown out.
But, I appreciate being part of this and allow me to kind of show stuff a little bit.
Yeah, right. Thank you, Pat.
Elected officials post it, and I use that. It does, it makes a difference. But yeah, they gotta see it. They gotta understand what, and it's super simple. But yeah, those two soils were across the room from each other.
Yeah.
Two different styles of farming. And that didn't just happen, it's clear when it just happened. It's years of right. So that's pretty cool. All right, now we're going to move on to the 26th. I can
Yeah.
Thoughts.
Exactly. It's coming up. It's racing up on me. This is the annual event that the commission's been hosting for 26 years. That, primary purpose was to bring together the folks in Michigan that are kind of like the equivalent of the commission members, but on the Michigan side, bring us all together, share ideas, basically do kind of a little bit what we end up doing at some of these meetings. We're sharing what's working, sharing what's not. And we typically organize it around a speaker, or we used to have, Adam's still wondering why we ever got rid of the lightning talks that we used to do that he got suckered into doing. where we have people forced to go for 5 minutes with their slides automatically going behind them, and that was entertaining. But typically we have a theme or a speaker, and for the last since COVID, I guess at least, we've been bouncing back and forth between Indiana and Michigan, east and west sides of the basin. So a couple of decisions, guidance I'm looking for, obviously topics and content, even sort of specific locations. I will say we were in Indiana last year. We were in LaGrange County. Is that Blackman Lake we were on?
Yep.
Yeah, out on Blackman Lake was really cool. We typically try to find a spot that's got a little, natural element to it. Originally for, 15 years, supposing was held at Fernwood Gardens over in Niles, which is a beautiful place to go. Typically we hold it on a Friday, get you done, after lunch, and you can, go enjoy a walk or whatever. Historically, it's always been held in May, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, the last few years, 3rd weekend in May. So in addition to just sort of openly looking for topics and locations and that kind of thing, the one decision or guidance that I'd like from you guys is for 2 or 3 years now, we've partnered with the Friends of the St. Joe River Association, who host an annual celebration, which has traditionally been a dinner with a speaker of their own, but we've been co-locating it where we do our event in the afternoon, has lunch, and then if they got the marathon all day event, they stick around for dinner and some other kind of entertaining program. So I'd like guidance from this commission as to whether we'd like to continue partnering with them on that. I'm part of that group as well, and we're holding a meeting next week where we'll be discussing this. Usually a lot of flexibility in that group as to where it's at and that kind of thing. But looking for input on that. And then, date is the other thing that I'd say, but I'd ask for flexibility in that. I'm sort of looking at the 15th of May. Like I said, it's on a Friday, mid-May. I might have a conflict on the 8th of May, and then who knows what our venue availability is going to be like. But that's what I'm looking for, Jim.
And you mentioned meeting or two ago, and I would be very interested, especially since you're trying to flip-flop back and forth. We've never had a symposium in the Headwaters area. And after you mentioned that, I took a little trip up to Hillsdale, and I don't know if you can find a venue. It's a neat area. I very much would affirm the combination of the Friends event with this event as well. I think that's a neat partnership.
It's funny you say that. So, because that's a technicality here that's like, what do you mean we've never had it in the Headwaters? We were practically in that. No, Pokagon State Park. I mean, that is darn near the top of, but you're right. If you want to talk about the source, like they consider the Lake Bobbease to be the source of the St. Joe River. It's just a little ditch coming out of there, but you're right. That's over in Hillsdale, which is, we've been east to Angola, but that's even further east up on the Michigan side. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
A lot of territory over there that's got
In
its own regional characteristics that are unique.
And I will say this from years of leadership at the Friends of the St. Joe, that area has been one of the hardest to get participation from. And I think it's because they are the headwaters of like 5 major river systems. So the Grand River, the Maumee River, they all start over there. And so they've got groups like ours, groups like the Friends, asking them to be part of it, all the time. And so for them to travel here to Goshen is like, yeah, right. It's hard. But that could be a way to maybe get some more participation, at least at an event, by being over that way. I suppose, yeah. Well, I'm open to, wherever. Martin sounds to be in favor. Any other thoughts on the partnership and the co-locating, co-hosting? Location wise, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
venue and just the ability to walk outside and go for a walk and not be. restricted.
Did you stick around long enough to get blown away? We had crazy storms that night. Yeah, that was so bizarre. Anyway, I'll be looking for some, if not, the same, but very similar, because Fernwood was like that too, where you could just go right out the door and,
I think that's that might be really regulated, Eagle from Michigan.
okay.
So they do Great Lakes Energy,
Yeah.
but they're kind of looking in the St. Joe River Basin area. We have been in contact with creating across the border commission with them because we're having issues with treating similar waste in Stewart County. And they take things kind of a different approach. And so they're working with DNR at that level. And then also Hillsdale Ranch County is working with Stewart County on some of those issues. So it might be good if we brought in regulatory on the Michigan side to see where they have similarities or differences, especially with how they do surveyor things. I'm for the department, so surveyor things.
Yeah.
And see where we compare and contrast on that and where we can actually collaborate more on the regulatory end. I know we are our own entities, but there has to be similarity difference. Because hearing how they do things online, how we other things. So I think it would be nice if they can kind of regulate from a regulatory perspective. If about uses that waters, what they're regulating affects us.
Mm. Yeah, and that would in ways it fits with the symposium from the standpoint of like, typically it's a little more like informative or working, like where we're trying to, either get into some, not too technical, but I'm saying as opposed to the event at night is more towards the entertainment side of things, because you start talking that and I'm like, regulatory, oh boy, no one's going to want to, or, but you're right. I mean, if the purpose of the event is to inform, and I still would push you though on like, it's all about the who's the one, who's the right person to give that information.
It would be interesting to see if somebody at Eagle that is overseeing projects that have been successful, so we could be more of a creative standpoint of what they're doing when it comes to regulating water, either litigation, remediation, or interesting projects that are newer.
Yeah.
In the sphere of water that potentially could increase our wheels down here in Indiana, and we potentially could look at it. Maybe they have a different idea similar to the data hub stuff. And so what are they doing?
Right. No,
Because
that's the purpose of the event. I mean, kind of like cross pollination, if you will. Well, I'm just let me talk. Yeah, like a who. Give me some ideas there, and I'm noticing time. We're running up against it. I'm hearing some support for the combination of the two events is still generally a thumbs up. Anybody opposed to that? And I'll move in that direction. Yeah, it doesn't have to be formal. If I know, yeah, okay. Okay, good.
Go ahead and reach out to.
Yes.
people in charge.
Perfect. Thank you.
Business updates, other business, other.
All right. I will keep this super brief. I know you don't believe it, but this is where I try to mention things that maybe weren't included in the agenda that have happened over the last quarter. There is definitely action. The state General Assembly's convening and bills are starting to come out. There is one that's going to affect us. Hopefully, I've been working hard to make sure it's not in any kind of negative way, but there's the Representative Lindauer, who chairs the Natural Resources Committee. has reached out that he's going to be introducing a bill to sort of consolidate all the river basin commissions into one. And that's like, wait, what? Just to consolidate our statute and sort of like establish a framework for like, you can be unique, but all river basin commissions kind of are have like these bones to them. And the woman from LSA that I've been working with has been really good about ensuring that no commission loses any ability or any member is lost or anything like that in the transition. So been very engaged on that. And the, that 1509 on the admin side, I had highlighted with, I'm told you I'm going to be reaching out to you guys for proxies.
They like to consolidate the Indiana code, so it's the same for all.
Exactly. We all have separate statutes right now, and we would be under one. Yep, that's right, Dan. Oh man, I at least have to mention the roundtable we hosted last quarter was really cool. Had our drain guys there, the surveyors, deputies, that kind of stuff. I know in LaGrange, like we learned a lot, and you know, we left the meeting kind of thinking, hey man, what Elkhart's doing, that's really gonna work, and it might still, but we did find the fuse or the circuit breaker. Yeah, so we're still, and Jim and I, we want to keep doing things like that. I definitely got that question about Lau and Beacon is going to come up. So surveyors, don't be surprised if you hear from me on sort of another project I've got brewing coming out of that roundtable. I mentioned Indiana Watershed Leadership Academy. Some of us were kind of on a little group to select our recipients. Super cool. We had good applicants. I will say Corey Stewart's here from the LaGrange County Surveyor's Office is one of the awardees of some financial support to go down there. So thank you for applying, Corey. Yeah. And Conrad Lichty, there's a lot of faces in the audience. Is Conrad here? Awesome. So Conrad's here working with the city of Goshen this season through an AmeriCorps program and invasive species management steward. We had a lot of applicants in a similar program, and Conrad jumped out just a little bit around the localness, and in that application was this desire, like, I'm going to be here. And so for me, at least, as one of the people reviewing that, helped with that. But and then on Watershed, Friends of the St. Joe also sponsored a couple of folks to go. Dan Burton and Chandra Kinney, who is the administrator of the Kalamazoo Conservation District, Soil and Water District. So bunch of other stuff on here, but those are the main things that I wanted to mention. I always offer, if someone wants sort of a more comprehensive accounting of what I've been up to outside of the main agenda, I've got it listed here and happy to share it. So any questions from any of you all on Director's Report? Oh, it's on here. I just didn't highlight. I didn't know how much time I had. But Jim and I participated. It was super cool. National Sustainability Conference came to South Bend this year. It was hosted in Notre Dame. It's kind of a big deal. And we were fortunate enough to be part of a panel with Dr. Jen Tank and Eric Horvath from the city of South Bend. Really interesting. And it sounds like, I mentioned it several times in this meeting, data centers. I'm assuming if you watch the news, you're hearing about them. It sounds like maybe they might be, I don't think any formal announcements have been made. At least we haven't heard from Jen, but she teased that Amazon might be sponsoring a project that we've been trying to get funding from the National Science Foundation for a long time. That could be kind of cool. So stay tuned on that. Anything else on the director's report? And I'll leave it at that. I just want to note that I did request any questions, comments to be submitted via email. I didn't get any. Nope. So I'll say our next meeting, March 5th. I will send out calendar invites to all my commission members after the new year for all the meetings for next year. This one is on the first Thursday, so it's a regular interval. And then for other stakeholders, I will get the website updated with all the new dates, and which is where you can find recordings, minutes, all that kind of stuff. I'll have that done after first of the year. That's all I've got, Jim.
No.
2 hours, man. We did it.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Dan Lash, who seconded that? Adam did. Thank you, everybody. Have a happy holidays. All right, I got to end this before I forget.